Welcome to Kent District Library's streaming programs. My name is Kathy, and I'm from the Plainfield branch. Tonight's program is called Cooking with Mandy, and it is the first of a four-part series where Mandy Thompson will teach us how to make pesto, pupusas, risotto, and gnocchi. Mandy Thompson is a wife and mother to three amazing children. She's long held a passion for nutrition and cooking, which led her to study holistic health and nutrition. She has worked in schools, adult foster care, kitchens, and for the last 6 years has been teaching cooking classes. She is also the moderator of What's Cooking Grand Rapids. Thanks for tuning in tonight, where you will learn to make pesto. And without further ado, here's Mandy Thompson. Hi, friends. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty tonight with our Cooking with Mandy show. I'm going to try one more time, and if that fails, we will post the video to Facebook. So hold on. Let's try this again.
On cheese before, which takes some time and some muscle. But this little thing, I almost bought it on Amazon and I decided not to. And then I was at Goodwill and it was 99 cents. So it was like a score. So you just load it into here. Hello, KDL friends. My name is Mandy Thompson, and today I'm going to teach you how to make my kale and walnut pesto. As you can see, I'm in my home kitchen. You're going to have to bear with me as I have never done a video like this before and I've never used camera equipment before. So I might look over here a little bit because this is where I can see the screen to tell if you guys can see what I'm doing. So yeah, like I said, we're going to make some kale and walnut pesto. And this is what it starts with. 1 bunch of kale. I washed this and I patted it dry, and we're going to remove all of the leaves from the stems. The stems can be a little bit woody and bitter, so we're just going to pull all those off just like that. These you can compost, you can feed them to your chickens like I do, or just discard them. So all of this is going to go into a food processor, and if you don't have one of those, I'll tell you what you can do in just a little bit. But all I do is I take this, rip it up a little bit, and I chuck it in my food processor. So I'm just going to keep doing that with these. So this recipe is the measurements are very loose. When I say 1 bunch of kale, sometimes when we go to the store, the bunches are huge. Sometimes when I go to the store, the bunches are really small. So this is kind of an eyeball it and make it as you want it type of recipe. So this bunch of kale that I just showed you, I'm going to pack it down a little bit. You don't want to pack it too tight. But this is probably going to be close to 8 or so cups of kale, which is a lot. I know. You can do less. You can do it in batches. Like I said, if you don't have a food processor, I'll just tell you now what you could do. You could either chop everything up really, really small to be able to mix and incorporate it. You could use a mortar and a pestle. I set mine aside a minute ago. I say a lot of ums. Please forgive me. Be kind. Make sure it is. That's the motto of the day. All right, I'm packing it in. Not too tight. We do have other things to add to this, but once we start processing it, it's going to break down a little bit. All right, that's about all I'm going to add for right now. I can't really bring it to you. All right, forgiveness. I'm just going to give this a quick pulse to break it down just a little bit. Awesome. It gives me a little bit more room to work with. If you don't have a food processor and your question is, can I use a blender? I'm going to say no. A blender is actually going to liquefy this a little too much. And we want this to remain in kind of like a fine, I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of. You want it to be in fine little pieces. You don't want it to be purified. All right. I think that's all I'm going to put in there. So basil is going to be the next ingredient. Traditionally, that's what pesto is made with basil. I like to use a whole bunch of kale for a couple of reasons. Number one, Basil can be a little bit pricey, especially if it's off season, but also kale packs a huge nutritional value, and I personally like to do that for my children and my family. So in the summertime, it's a lot easier to find basil, and it's a really great one to grow. It grows really, really well in a lot of different soils. But today, I just bought this at my local grocery store. It's a whole basil plant, which you can maybe stick it in a little bit of water. And if you have a sunny windowsill, you could grow this. However, it honestly, at my house anyways, it doesn't grow very well indoors. But I wanted to show you a cool trick with basil if you do grow it indoors or grow it outside. Let's see if I can, if you can see this particular stem, how there's a split. Oh, I just broke that one. That one's not going to work. Let's move on to this one. There's a split right here. Okay. If you take and you nip this off right here, like so, now we're going to use this in our recipe, and it left this right here. More basil is going to grow from this little section here. And actually, if you really look close, there's already a little bit that's growing right there. So if you're growing this in your garden, you could do that. You can snip those off and you're going to get a much bushier plant, and it's going to continue to grow. My basil outside grew until the first frost. So that's kind of a cool little trick. Anyways, so the basil today, we're going to use about a half a cup. I'm going to say about a whole bunch because, like I said, it's really a non-recipe. It's a very fluid recipe. All right, checking to see what you guys can see. I know the angle's odd. Okay. And I don't have a whole lot of room. I have a small 1950s kitchen. My hope was to show you guys that you can cook in any environment. I know there are bigger kitchens and there are smaller kitchens than mine, and this is about the counter space that I have to work with, so I do what I can. Okay, so about a half a cup, we're gonna add that. And then today, instead of pine nuts, I'm using walnuts, partially because pine nuts are very expensive. And, you know, I like to be a little budget friendly, budget conscious. We do have 3 children, and pine nuts are just not in my budget. Anyways, walnuts are really great, and they have a lot of protein, so I like to use those. These I did toast just slightly on the stovetop, a couple of minutes, just to release the oils, a little more flavor. You can skip this part, but it's something that I like to do. I'm going to add that straight to the food processor as well. Next ingredient would be garlic. Garlic is one you have to measure with your heart. We personally love garlic. Fresh garlic is super healthy for you, especially in the winter months. So let's see. This was in case you don't know, this is a bulb of garlic, and this is a clove of garlic. So if a recipe specifically calls for a clove, it's talking about one of these little guys that you peel out of the whole bulb, okay? Like I said, this one 4 to 8 cloves. These ones are pretty good sized cloves, so I'll probably use maybe 6 or wrestle with it. But if garlic is too intense for you, you can cut back. Use 1 or 2. That's totally fine. Like I said, we love it. We like the zest and the spice that it gives us. You don't have to cut this at all. All you have to do, I like to take the side of my knife with the blade facing away from me, set it down, give it a little whack, and that's just going to help release the skins, because I'm just going to chuck this whole clove right into my processor. My food processor is going to do most of the work for me. They do sell those little jars of garlic, which clearly makes it very convenient, very easy to measure out. You don't have to have garlicky smelling fingers. You don't have to deal with the papers. It's totally fine, but I'm just not a fan. I like the fresh stuff. A lot more health benefits in the fresh stuff, and a much more intense flavor, in my opinion. All right, we've got all that in there. Okay, next is Parmesan cheese. If you can, please by, sorry, this is where my screen is and there's a delay, so bear with me if, if I look silly. If you can, please buy a wedge of Parmesan cheese. Avoid the stuff, the shaky stuff that comes on the shelf. It's shelf stable. It's shelf stable because it has a bunch of stuff in it to make it not go bad, which is not very good for you. And this stuff just tastes so much better. It's not that much more expensive, and you're going to get a lot more out of this. Even the stuff that looks like it's nicer, that's pre-shredded, it still has stuff on it. Okay, I'm at home. My husband's about to walk in. That's part of filming at home, right? So anyways, this you can shred. Now I'm gonna fumble because he's walking in. I picked this up at Goodwill for 99 cents, and I was super excited about it because I was hand grating all of my Parmesan cheese before, which takes some time and some muscle. But this little thing, I almost bought it on Amazon, and I decided not to. And then I was at Goodwill, and it was 99 cents, so it was like a score. So you just load it into here, and turn, and it gives you your cheese. But I already did that, so you don't have to watch me. So there's my half a cup Parmesan cheese. And we're gonna give it another pulse, break it down. And if you're using a food processor, you don't want to really just keep it whirling, because then again, a lot like the blender would do, it can make it more of a paste, and we're not looking for a paste. Okay, and then I like to use lemon juice. And one thing about buying lemons at the store, the color always doesn't determine the ripeness of all fruit. So these, when I bought them, they have some green on them, but they were very soft. Can you see how I can push into this? Pretty soft. That means there's lots of juice in there, and the rind is not super duper thick. So that's all you're looking for. It's just something that has a little bit of give to it. And then when you go to juice it, if you put it down on your counter or your board and you give it a little push, you're going to release even more juice. Okay. So this is a pretty good size lemon. I'm going to say we would use about half. We're looking for about a quarter of a cup if we're following the recipe that I've come up with. And then I just use this little guy because it helps me get out more juice. You can squeeze it by hand. Some people will stick a fork in it to help squeeze it out. This is just quick, something that I like to use. So the lemon juice is going to help us cut back on the amount of salt that we use. It's going to give it a bright, vibrant flavor. And it gives us a little bit of liquid to work with too. All right, speaking of salt, you do need a little pinch of salt. I'm gonna start with about a quarter teaspoon. And pepper. You can use the stuff in the container that's pre-ground or ground yours up. You can omit it if pepper is too much for you. You get to decide. You're the one doing the cooking. By the way, this is an awesome recipe to do with kids. Kids as young as 2-3 years old could totally help you with this. They could rip up all that kale for you. Your older kids could do the cheese. You know, they got lots of energy. They're strong. They could do the cheese for you. Juicing citrus is super fun for little kids. They could do that. All right, I'm going to give this another little pulse. I wish I could bring the camera over so you could see it a little closer, but it took my husband and I a very long time to even get this angle in our kitchen. So hopefully you can see what we've got going on here. I know. Okay. Gotta wait for the delay to catch up. That's where we're at. Okay. It's still big chunks. That's about where you want to be right now. And that's about where you want to be if you were chopping it up by hand like a rock star, or if you were mashing it down with a mortar and a pestle. Okay. All right, grab my towel, excuse me. Okay, putting the lid back on, and now we go for our oil because we're making a sauce, right? A pesto. So I use olive oil. Usually I would use a much darker, much better olive oil than this, but when I opened my pantry, I realized that all I had was the stuff that I just um, cook with when I'm not needing the flavor. So ignore the color. Please buy a very good olive oil that has like a pretty green tint to it. So now we're going to add this to our kale and our basil and whatnot in a very slow stream with it running. Very slow stream, but also we don't want to take too long because like I said, we don't want to turn this into a paste. We're trying to keep good chunks where we can see the definition of the different ingredients that are in there. So bear with me for just a moment. I'm going to turn this on and drizzle it in pretty slowly. I'm going to stop for a moment. This was a total of 1.5 cups of olive oil. I stopped at about 1 cup. I'm going to open it up, scrape down the sides, and see what it looks like. And when I get to the consistency that I like, I'll show it to you. So just give me just a moment. Check this out. All right. Because I didn't use all of that kale earlier, this actually looks pretty close to how I want it. I'm going to give it a couple more buzzes because I just scraped down the sides, and then we will give it a taste. Oh, that's lovely. All right. Now you get to see it. So this pesto that I like to make, that my family likes, is pretty thick for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't want to use a whole lot of oil. You know, you don't need too much. You could use water at this point. Don't tell any Italians that I said that. I'm sorry. All right. So this, get you closer, is about the consistency that I like. So I keep it thick. Number one, because, well, this is a lot of pesto, you guys. That's probably 3 or 4 cups worth, which is a lot. But we use it for a lot of different things. Not only do we use it on pasta, another video that I'm going to do, sometime this week, next week, is gnocchi. So you can toss it with any pasta, but I'm going to show you gnocchi coming up soon. We like to toss it with vegetables, with roasted vegetables. My kids like to spread it on bread for sandwiches, or even sometimes they like to use it on bread instead of butter if we're doing dinner that involves a piece of bread. We like it in scrambled eggs. We like it all sorts of things. Now, when I do put it on pasta, I put it on like this, pretty thick, but then I add pasta water to thin it out. So it creates more of a sauce. Also, it freezes really well. So you could put this into smaller containers. It'll keep in the fridge for a week, maybe even 2, maybe, depends on your preferences. But it keeps in the freezer really, really well. So I'll just put it either in small little glass mason jars or just little to-go containers. Works really well. I usually freeze it in about 4-ounce sizes, and that 4 ounces will do, like a whole batch of pasta and have some left over. So if I'm doing, say, a 16-ounce box of whatever pasta, I'll maybe use 2 ounces of that 4 ounces that I froze as my sauce, because like I said, I'm adding that pasta water. But this is a recipe that's all based upon preferences. Okay. You get to taste it. You get to decide. I like to let it sit on the counter for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so and give it a taste before I decide if it needs more salt or if it needs more lemon juice. The cheese, I usually just leave how it is. The walnuts, usually just leave it how it is. If you are vegan or you avoid dairy for any reason, nutritional yeast is a really good substitute for the Parmesan cheese. You still get that flavor. You're just eliminating the dairy portion of it. And also, I like to make pestos out of other things other than kale. And I have some things just to give you some options, different nuts and different greens. One of the ones that we can use is spinach. Okay. Spinach has a different flavor than kale. Some people don't care for kale. Spinach is a lot softer of a flavor. I still like to use the basil with it and the walnuts. I've also used almonds with the spinach before. I keep forgetting this is my camera. Okay, raw almonds, unsalted. Another really good one would be beet greens. You could totally use beet greens as a green for your kale or for your pesto. And then you can roast these and put the beet pesto on top of the beets. Yummy, yummy. And another really fun one that a lot of people don't know about are carrot tops. So if you buy whole carrots like this, either at the grocery store or the farmer's market in the summer or early fall, don't throw these away. These have a ton of nutritional value. They're really tasty. Like a really mild parsley. So having said the parsley part, I wouldn't put basil in with the carrot top pesto. I would use parsley as another vibrant herb to add more flavor to it. Oh, and then this one would be really yummy with cashews instead of the pine nuts. Cashews are expensive too, but you don't need very much. It just adds a little extra to it. So I think that's it. All right, that was my first video. Sometimes I ramble. Hopefully all of that made sense. I will make sure to add the recipe. I will give the recipe to the KDL so that they can perhaps post it. But a quick rundown, it was 1 bunch of kale, which could be big, it could be small. You're gonna have to decide how much you wanna put in there. About 1/2 cup of fresh basil leaves. And we talked about how you should grow those outside during the summertime. Really, really prolific herb. We used 1 cup of walnuts that we toasted just slightly to release some of the oils, give it a little bit more flavor. We used 1/2 cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. Important, I think, to use fresh, but you do you, whatever you like. We used about 1/4 cup or 1/2 of a good sized lemon of lemon juice for that bright vibrancy. We used some salt, we used some pepper to taste, and we used olive oil. It was 1.5 cups was the measurement, but because I used a little less of the kale, I didn't use the full amount. I did 1 cup and then I stopped and I took a peek at it. And again, consistency that I prefer, and you can make it thinner. You could totally thin it out with more oil or with a little bit of water. Just don't tell any Italians. But that's the consistency that I like. I'm going to dump it in my hand just so you can see how it falls. Still pretty chunky, super flavorful. You can put it on all sorts of stuff, and it's really yummy. All right, thank you for watching. I have a few more videos that I'm going to do, and hopefully they won't be so scattered or silly because this was my first. I appreciate you watching, and yeah, peace.
Thanks for watching Cooking with Mandy tonight, and thanks for bearing with my technical difficulties. In the next 3 cooking episodes, we will learn how to make risotto, pupusas, and gnocchi. And again, thanks. We'll see you next Thursday at 6:30.